So
I think there was a comparable month in February that was one of the highest since the crisis. But yes,
fair enough. But that's 1 month. Annually, the record number of crossings was 46,800 something.
At the start of the crisis.
In 2022. Yeah. Well, just a factual correction. And I have no love whatsoever for Keir Starmer's Labour Party, but actually the year for the highest number of crossings in small boats was under the Tories. It was in 2022 and it was 46,000.
The highest number of small boat crossings occurred under the Tories in 2022 with 46,800 crossings. That's what the Liberal claimed in this explosive debate. But what happened when the Conservative pointed out that most migrants are choosing Britain over other safe European countries? Watch as a patriotic Brit systematically dismantles every talking point.
Which was under the Tories. So let's just say that. And I want to come back to that point in a minute because this is a cross-party thing. Overall, and it probably won't surprise you, I want to reject the premise of the way that we're talking about this. And
From a self-proclaimed compassionate Liberal who suggested migrants are just victims of countries the UK has bombed. This debate perfectly captures why the British public's patience with illegal immigration has finally run out. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Do push back against the meal deal comparison. People going in those dinghies have had, in most cases, very, very difficult lives, and they
How do you know
are
that?
doing it. That's why I said in most cases. Well, because I don't know about you, Andrew.
When Labour promised to smash the gangs facilitating illegal crossings, many Britons cautiously hoped for real change. 10 months later, that promise rings hollow, as boat arrivals have actually increased under their watch. The Conservative debater laid this failure bare in the heated exchange, pointing to statistics that reveal the uncomfortable truth. Not only has Labour failed to reduce crossings, they've presided over an acceleration of the crisis they vowed to solve. Nearly 10 months into Labour's term, the number of boat crossings has actually increased, the Conservative challenger stated bluntly during the debate, highlighting how the current reality at Britain's borders stands in stark contrast to Labour's campaign rhetoric. This represents more than just a policy stumble. It's a fundamental breach of trust with voters who took Labour at their word. Coastal communities bear the brunt of this political theatre. In Dover and other entry points, residents described the daily spectacle of boats arriving and the subsequent strain on local infrastructure.
But I don't assumptions.
But sometimes it's fair to make assumptions. I don't know about you, Andrew, but I don't fancy climbing into a dinghy and crossing a freezing.
Schools, healthcare facilities and housing, already stretched thin, now face unprecedented pressure. Meanwhile, the authorities appear powerless to stem the tide, despite grand promises to tackle the root causes. The financial implications are staggering. It is costing the taxpayer billions of pounds, the Conservative debater emphasised, referring to the mounting expenses for hotel accommodation, processing centres, legal proceedings, and benefits provided to those who enter illegally. This immense cost comes at a time when many British families struggle with rising living costs and inadequate public services. Public sentiment has crystallised into frustration. The Conservative debater captured this mood perfectly, stating that the British public has had enough and is not prepared to see the country have people coming in illegally. Indeed, polls consistently show overwhelming opposition to illegal immigration across political lines, yet the government appears paralysed when it comes to enacting effective solutions. The debate took a particularly interesting turn when the Conservatives suggested that leaving the European Convention on Human Rights might be necessary to implement a much tougher Rwanda-style policy. This provocative proposal underscores just how desperate the situation has become, contemplating withdrawal from major international frameworks to regain sovereign control over borders. Perhaps most damning was the Conservatives' systematic exposure of Labour's empty rhetoric. The "Smash the Gangs" slogan, once a cornerstone of Labour's immigration platform, now stands revealed as little more than a political gimmick with no substance behind it. No gangs have been smashed. No meaningful border control measures have been implemented. The promise, like so many before it, has evaporated into the political ether. Beyond the empty rhetoric and broken immigration pledges lies a fundamental question that strikes at the heart of Britain's crisis. If these migrants are genuinely fleeing persecution, why do they bypass multiple safe European countries before risking death in the English Channel? The Conservatives' answer to this question exposes an uncomfortable truth. that many politicians refuse to acknowledge. Throughout the debate, the Liberal repeatedly framed migrants as victims, refugees desperately fleeing countries that Britain had bombed or invaded, deserving of compassion and asylum. This humanitarian narrative paints a compelling picture of families escaping immediate danger with nowhere else to turn. Yet the Conservatives systematically dismantled this portrayal with a stark counter-argument. Most channel crossers are young men seeking economic opportunities, not families fleeing imminent threats. The Conservatives' most damning point centred on a simple geographical reality. France, Germany and Italy are considered safe countries, they emphasised. Yet migrants risk their lives to cross the Channel to the UK. This observation cuts through the emotional appeals and gets to the heart of asylum law. Genuine refugees should seek protection in the first safe country they reach. The pattern of migrants travelling through multiple European nations before attempting the dangerous Channel crossing suggests motivations beyond immediate safety. When challenged on this point, the Liberal attempted a historical comparison to post-World War II Germany, which the Conservative dismissed as utterly ridiculous. They highlighted a crucial distinction. Most working-age men during World War II were serving as soldiers in other countries, directly refuting the analogy the Liberal had tried to establish. This exchange revealed the Liberals' tendency to rely on emotional appeals rather than addressing the actual demographics and choices of current migrants. The debate took an unexpected turn when the Conservative introduced the issue of Western sanctions, particularly on Iran, which has faced crippling Western sanctions for 40 years. This point broadened the discussion beyond simplistic narratives of war refugees, suggesting that economic hardship caused by Western policy decisions plays a significant role in migration patterns, a nuance often missing from mainstream coverage. The tension peaked when the Conservative directly challenged the Liberals' understanding of asylum law. By questioning why migrants don't seek asylum in the first safe country they reach, the Conservative exposed a fundamental contradiction in the Liberal position. The implication was clear. If safety were the primary concern, France would be the destination, not a transit point on the journey to Britain. Tonight's debate highlights the fundamental choice Britain must now confront: maintain policies that clearly aren't working, or make the difficult decision to step away from frameworks like the ECHR that hamper effective border control. As the Conservative debater bluntly stated, if you come into this country illegally, you don't come in, you're sent out immediately. That's the only policy that will work. This perspective reflects the growing sentiment that international obligations have become obstacles to national sovereignty. What's most telling is the absence of any meaningful counter-proposal from Labour. They can't address the crisis while remaining bound by conventions that prioritise rights claims over territorial integrity. The British public deserves more than empty slogans and diplomatic hand-wringing.